Hey everybody, just driving down the road. I felt like I needed to share something with you. I do my best to try to keep up with what's going on around in the world, whether I comment on it or whether I share my opinion about it or not. I still try to keep up with what's going on. And with all of that, people send me videos, and I have heard audio clips, all kinds of stuff about current events and all this kind of thing. And this is something I hear a lot of, and I know you do as well. And this is the phrase, God spoke to me and told me this, or God spoke to my heart and revealed this. Things of that nature. And I just felt like I needed to come on and say a few things about that. There's one thing, when God speaks, He speaks through His Word. God is not a psychic with a crystal ball at the county fair that we pay $5 to, and He tells us that it's going to snow next Thursday. God doesn't do that. He doesn't, speak to us in the shower and say we're going to, trip and fall next month and break our ankle. God doesn't do that. That's not what He does. So a lot of times when you hear people say, well, God spoke to me and told me this, if it's not based upon His Word, you can guarantee that God didn't tell them anything. Now, here's something I want to point out. In the Garden of Eden, in the book of Genesis, God spoke to Adam and Eve, and He told them this: you can eat of any tree of the garden, you may freely eat, but of that tree in the midst of the garden thou shalt not eat of it, because in the day you eat thereof ye shall surely die. That's what He spoke to them. He spoke to their heart. He spoke to them, however you want to word it. But here's something I want to point out. In Genesis chapter 3, the devil comes into the garden, finds Eve, and speaks to her heart. And he uses the Word of God to do it. Now, mind you, when the devil uses the Word of God, he twists, and he adds to, and he subtracts. He all out denies the Word of God. Matter of fact, he told Eve, God didn't really say that. God didn't really mean what He said. He added to, he subtracted, all those kinds of things. Point being, God spoke, and so did the devil. Just like in Matthew chapter 4, the devil used the Word of God. Twisted, added to, subtracted, all those kinds of things in the temptation in the wilderness. Here's what I'm trying to say. Be careful. Be careful about dragging God into your psychic revelations. Be careful about blaming God, because what happens is when whatever you said, whatever you dreamed, whatever you're hoping that comes to pass don't come to pass, then non-believers that look at you when you said God told me and it didn't come to pass, it makes God look like a liar, when God's not the liar at all, you are. So, if God spoke to your heart, or God spoke to you through His Word, perfect, wonderful, just be sure He spoke to you. Again, I say it again, God's not a psychic reader with a crystal ball or a genie in the bottle that we rub and He comes out and grants us 3 wishes and tells us the future. Yes, God does tell us the future, and it's found in His Word, the book of the Revelation. He tells us about the rapture of the church, which is the next event on God's time calendar. He tells us about the Battle of Armageddon, from the Bear of the North, the Kings of the East, all those kinds of things, future events. So if you want to be able to tell the future, it's already written down. He's not going to give you any added revelation. If He does, then you need to start Revelation chapter 23 and start writing. But if not, Revelation 22 ends the revelation. And what our job as Christians to read His Word so He will speak to us. If you're not reading His Word, He's not speaking to you. He's not speaking to your heart. Now, I know I'm going to have some critics. Oh, yeah, God's woke me up in the middle of the night and told me to pray for so-and-so. I understand that. That's perfectly fine. Yes, that is written in His Word. Praying for folks that God lays on our heart. Yes, perfectly fine. I'm not talking about that at all. Just be careful about saying and bringing God into our fortune-telling abilities. Make sure you stay with His Word. And if you want to hear His voice, read His Word. If you're not reading His Word, He's not speaking to you. Before you got saved, He spoke to you about getting saved through His Word, through a preacher preaching, whether it was on a Sunday, whether you read a gospel tract, whatever it was, He was speaking to your lost heart through His Word. That's how He speaks today. So, be careful about saying God spoke to my heart. Just make sure He did before you share.